And let's kick off maybe with the client updates as usual. So maybe let's hear from Besu first. Capitano, are you here?
Sorry, I was muted. So for Besu, we have all of the EOF stuff implemented except for Create 4. We don't have the transaction in our EOF, Mega EOF branch, and I don't have the code written for it yet, but I do have Create 3. I'm written in, I have Exchange, I have contract copy, not return data copy or return data load, whichever one it is, and the return contract. And those at least loop through most of the reference tests. Some of the reference tests it's touch and go to figure out which reference tests are up to date and which ones aren't, and which ones reflect the current state of the spec. There's like 4 different PRs, and I'm not sure which ones to pull in. And there's even some, I think some of the fills are incorrect because one of the older PRs has legacy still delegate calling, and it has a legacy, not delegate call, has legacy still external code copying incorrectly into EOF and getting the full value out of it rather than the specified values. So can't get a clean run on the reference tests because at least some of them are out of date, but that's our current status.
Okay, so I think the tests have several branches and PRs, as you have noticed. And as a summary is that one branch, I always get confused with this, so maybe Andre, correct me. One branch is sort of following the new create model, which is EOF create and TX create. Whereas there's also a branch and tag, which EVM1 master CI uses. And that, for example, contains changes like the EXT code copy ones and EXT code in general, and also one other thing which I can't remember right now. So it's a bit complicated, I would say, I think.
I mean, it's a bit of a bad experience where you can't say,
I know.
here's one branch, these are all the current and correct reference tests, especially when we're being held back because one client doesn't have all the stuff implemented. So it's kind of a feel bad.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. I have been struggling with this. But I think it's a bit contingent on getting the create free and at least from my perspective, it's a bit contingent on or blocked on getting the create branch merged in EVM1 because that has already gone into the develop branch of tests, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Or at least partially.
Yeah, it's partially gone into the develop tests.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to resolve this except like moving forward, maybe.
And trying to get retest that to generate tests for the filler is just a giant pain in the neck. I have to use a very old Mac that doesn't have current stuff on it, and even then, it's quite difficult and fragile to use to produce tests out of the filler.
Gotcha. Yeah, so so far I have only been successful to fill the test that I needed for the non-create sort of branch, and I can share the setup that I have been using to do this.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know if there's any plan except. Sorry, go on.
I mean that's where we're at. We're just at the point where we need to get the reference tests basically in line with the reference tests and the reference tests in line with the spec. Most of the heavy lifting has been done in Besu except for Create 4.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else had any response to the test problem or comments?
I still didn't try to use them, so not from me.
Okay. Since you have the mic, Dragan, can you give us an update on Rivian?
Yeah. I have skeleton for new calls. and creates. I still need to figure out return contract, and I'm currently focusing on validation. At validation, we have like skeleton of most of EOF features. So after that, it's debugging, detailing, and basically, yeah, figuring out the details. But when skeleton is like done, it'd be a lot easier. That's most from my side.
Okay, cool. Do we need to update the implementation matrix for Besu and Rivian? Or are they? I have not.
They're accurate. For Besu, they're accurate.
Cool. Thank you very much.
For me, I updated it last week for some
Okay.
for some EIPs that are very easy to test,
Okay.
at least in the code. For others like polls and validation, I'll need to have some testing to be sure that they are like okay. Maybe I'll update the equals to be in progress, something like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And the EVM1, I can say that the exchange has merged for us recently, and calls 2.0 are in review, and the create branch is also in review. Andrei can maybe say more about the create part.
Yeah, not much. For TX create, we are optimizing the interface between EVM and host now. But yeah, needs mostly reviews at this point, especially EOF create.
By the interface, you mean EVMC, right?
Yeah, I mean EVMC, yes.
Okay, cool. And any more client teams? Maintainer is, are you with the client team? Is that yes or no? Okay, I don't know. So no. So moving on to the compiler updates, and we can see that there are no updates from Viper side. And then we have the spec updates next. And here I have two updates to share. There has been a change, and there's a PR with a bunch of changes for the calls 2.0, but there has been one added right now, which is that the MIN CALLEE GAS failure is now a light failure, which was suggested by Andre. I think there was some support for this. I think it makes sense. I've changed this here and also in our EVM1 branch. Other than that, there's some like three or two other EIP updates in review. And do we have anything else on the specs to discuss or update?
So do we go with this change with the light failure for below MIN CALLEE GAS?
Yeah, there was no objections, and it makes sense. And also, you and Charles, I think, voiced support, and I think it makes sense for myself as well. And I think yes. I mean, if there's any objections, then just let us know.
I just want to expand a little. I think it is good to match the implementation. So like if the implementation doesn't actually need to create the call frame, then you do the light failure, which I think is what the spec does, but I'm not sure.
The spec before the update that is in review right now said fail with an error, and it's sort of sounded like a hard failure. The EIP 7069. And I think that was meant there. But now after this PR to EIP 69 merges, it will be a light failure. Okay, any other spec related questions, comments, topics to discuss? Okay.
I just wonder about this call gas. Because we don't control the gas as the argument of a call, right? So I wonder if this actually not like a kind of backdoor to intercept or figure out some information about the gas, because if the gas is below this value and you make a call, then if it's like observable difference in the behavior of EVM comparing to like the other scenario. I'm not sure this is very useful, but somehow it kind of leaks this information outside.
Yeah. But you also pay some gas to this check. So you would, do you see a scenario where someone can actually?
Well, I don't think this is very useful, but sometimes we are surprised by the
creativity of people.
Yes. I mean, I think it's, what is the current value? Like 5,000 or something?
This is the minimum retained gas.
Oh, okay.
So I think the gas logic is that the call message is going to get the sorry, the other way around. The caller is going to retain either this 5,000 or the 1/64th of the available gas. That's what the caller keeps, and the callee gets the rest. And if that rest is not enough for the callee gas, then it will do the failure which we were discussing, which is right now the light failure.
Yeah.
So it would take a lot of such calls to figure out the gas available. You would basically need to.
Can you also distinguish it from the other light failures?
No, you cannot. But I mean, yes, you can, because if you know that you're not incredibly deep in the call stack and you're not sending any value, then the only other. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
mostly
no. Stretch. It can also
the
be
only
Because like,
answer.
you can also kind of introspect the call stack depth, right? Like if you get a light failure, you know, okay, like you can already tell that the balance checks, so we can ignore that. But if you get a light failure, then you know that it's either a gas issue or a stack depth issue, both of which
correct,
are
or a revert, but
kind of,
presumably you control the callee at this point. Because a revert also returns 1.
Right. Or it could be a revert. But like you could always you can do like a call to the empty.
Yeah.
An empty
so if you
account or
control the
something.
callee, then that's also out of the question, and it is only called depth stack. Or gas.
I mean, I personally don't actually like the.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can't distinguish from
just spending some time thinking about if. I mean, what's the worst case scenario that could happen when someone knows how much gas was sent? Let's assume it's possible and just someone gets the knowledge. by some intricate calls.
But wouldn't it revert anyways?
What do you mean?
Like if the call frame were actually created. Oh, I see. It's like I need to think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe worth to keep it at the back of the head and think a little bit on this. So if anyone thinks of a way that this can be exploited, then just let us know in the PR. Otherwise, it seems to be preferable to keep it as light failure.
I've actually always been like hesitant about having the light failure anyways. Like, why do we need it?
We discussed this last time. I can't remember what the conclusion was. Was it like?
I think the conclusion was it's what
inertia?
the legacy call does.
Yeah.
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 But
And
like,
it makes sense to me in a way.
if you think about calling a contract, you kind of just want to know if it's a user revert or not.
I don't know. I don't have any comments on this.
Like if I think about actually like using call to and trying to find out if it's a user revert or one of these light failure conditions, like I start to cry inside because like I don't know. Can you actually tell if it's a user reversion?
Well, we kind of, I'm not sure what is the current status, but we wanted to include this information. I think in general this is really delicate topic because like calls are complicated. So even for gas, I kind of imagine that we could make some kind of like table that shows what is the current gas behavior for the calls. Like, I mean, how much gas is actually consumed on the caller side, how much gas is passed to the callee, how much of this gas is burned or the cost of it. And I think maybe there's a way to kind of visualize this, because even for current EVM, I wouldn't be able to answer this right now without checking the code. And maybe that kind of works as a kind of visualization of what's going on, like where gas is putting, how much is like, what are the requirements, what is the minimum on both sides, how much the minimum the callee gets, what is the maximum the callee gets in different cases. And maybe we can do the same for the EOF, for the new calls, and see if there's any like something doesn't look right. And I think it's also worth to get feedback from compilers and like mostly contract devs, because yeah, I don't really feel as someone who actually uses the calls very often in practice. So I imagine that the Solidity is mostly in this user facing semantic. They mostly convert the light failures into hard failures anyway, right? That's what I remember from some years ago. But so I wonder if this makes sense for them to either expose more information, or maybe do just like should default like single behavior. That's expected.
Okay. Do you want us to make such a table?
Yeah, I'm not sure like what exactly to put it, but I can also try to do it.
Yeah, it's
for the current EVM, for example. Let's see how it looks.
Yeah, it can be quite complicated. I don't remember about Charles, whether we have answered this or not.
If the question is why is there like this call stack limit
Yeah.
a light failure, I don't think there's like a good answer to this. It mostly comes from like one of the first implementations of EVM, and yeah, someone put it in the place that was was just working like this. And similar for yeah, and similarly for the create, there's some cases that it works this way, and I think it's in many cases it just comes to the fact like who and exactly at which point, like where exactly in the code someone implemented the check, because some of the checks were added later. For example, I think the call stack limit wasn't there in the first place. It was added after some like audit or stuff like that. So mostly I think that's kind of likely explanation that someone actually took this result of the audit and added the check, and it happened to be the place in the code that
Sorry, you said there was an audit?
Yeah, the very beginning, before Ethereum
Well, like
launched.
maybe if we know who added it, we can ask them. If we
But
can
no, I mean, it wasn't. I think it wasn't so detailed. I think the recommendation was to add some limits to the how deep the call stack is, right? So that was kind of the suggestion. And then the like the developers decided, okay, the limit will be 1024, and let's just add it, and someone added and generated tests, and the rest like followed by this. Mostly that's happened, I think, in many cases. About if you try to explain some of these EVM quirks, I think mostly this is the the reason in many cases.
Because I mean, I was always thinking that not creating the callee frame was the criteria, that if you don't do it, then it should be a light failure. But I just realized that the static check is a hard failure. Static calls, we cannot you cannot
This
send
is like
value with
calling
a static
an
call.
external call from a static call context.
No, I always keep forgetting what that is. It is static mode violation is when the call has value, but we're in static mode. So
yeah,
I mean, when you're static calling and then calling and you send value in the second call, then that violates the staticness of the original call. But that's a hard failure.
I didn't realize that you can do a call from a static call context.
Well,
yeah, you can, provide it. You don't send any value because that's a state modification. Otherwise, it's fine. Provided like the underneath call will not modify a state as well, and yeah.
Yeah, so it carries
I don't
on the
think.
stack, right?
Yeah, that.
So what was the reasoning that someone has, because static call was much later than the original, right, EVM, and what was the rationale to make it a hard failure? That maybe that would shed some light.
Well, if you like S store in a static call, I think you get an exceptional failure.
Yes, but here we're doing a call, and we're not creating the callee frame. So why is that not
the
like
value transfer happens before the caller frame? So if you do the same rules, then it's like a set balance. And the set balance is actually the thing that throws the exception.
No, no, that happens before the check is, at least in EVM1, it happens before the balances are touched, I think.
But the balance change happens before the call, right?
Does it? Oh, I don't know. I'm looking at EVM1, so this is not a good example.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think the status code is like most useful to find out if it's a user failure or not. And if we can't tell if it's a user failure or not, then maybe we shouldn't even have the status code.
What is a user failure? Not supplying enough money, supplying money when it's static. Someone throws
user failure is a
invalid
revert.
later down. Someone throws a revert later down.
It's a user revert.
So do we have one status code that's related to calls within the operation and the next one for anything coming from the context? And that sounds like what it's circling the drain towards what it is right now, with the static money check and the not enough money check being an error within the operation, which would be the light failure, versus an error from subsequent execution, which is the number 2, the heavy error.
Unless it's a revert. Right.
Well, the only way to return failure from a call is to revert or invalid.
There's a lot of ways to exit from a call. That
you can stop. Yeah, stop is valid. Return is valid. And those return 0. Or those return success.
Or you can run out of gas,
returns 1, which is
try to change the state in a static call context.
That's an error. That's an exception in the process. That's not a deliberate attempt to return.
Right, exactly. So like it should tell you what the user intent is. Like you either had a regular return, you had a revert, or you had an exceptional hold. At least that's like what my smooth brain like idea of what the status code means. And then, you know, I can imagine like being a user and like implementing this and then finding out that, you know, these light failures are also bundled into the revert, and then it becomes problematic.
But then there's the inertia. I don't know what's more important, like.
But the inertia is 1 or 0. Like if we kept it the way it is.
In this distinguishability kind of an argument.
What if we give every failure style its own number?
Like that's the opposite spectrum.
Yeah, I think if we want to leak less information, it should just be then we should move the light failures into the exceptional, into the status code 2. And like you can't actually tell. I think if you move those into status code 2, then there's not very much you can introspect.
So status code 1 comes from calling the revert operation or the invalid operation, and status code 2 comes from literally everything else. Only revert.
Only revert.
Okay.
In the callee frame, yes, only revert will give you 1.
So 1 is only when there is a revert being passed in for the parent, and literally everything else goes into 2.
Yeah.
Well, and then call stack depth, the balance check, and the minimum callee gas from today on. That also gives you 1. Which it is messy.
I mean, it sounds like what people would want to react to was, did I throw an error, or did something that I can't control went wrong? Like a VM error, like, you know, out of memory, out of stack, static call. I think that's really what they want to distinguish. Am I throwing a, you're not the owner of this contract, or am I getting a you use the wrong syntax on this opcode.
Additionally, people probably want to differentiate between are the gas spent or did it just like reverted? Not reverted, but like light failed. If the whole gas is spent for the stack or flow stack alpha or anything like that, that means that you will have less gas to continue your execution.
Well, we're trying. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on if if gas introspection, if like gas should be observable or not, and if the point is to like remove gas observability, then like you shouldn't be able to do that check.
Okay, I think I concur with Pavel that we need a table that will just demonstrate the current status. And I would love to list out all the contending ideas or layouts of this, because I mean these various returned status codes were introduced to be different, but in a way right now we're not levered, we're not like the differentiation between 0, 1, and 2 is just messed up in a way. So maybe we should like spell this out in an issue which I can open somewhere and just visualize the current status, and then visualize also what we would like to have, like the arguments. Make a survey. So yeah, I can open such an issue and try to also work with. Yeah. Right. Okay. So maybe let's stop here before we have this this visualization ready to kind of focus the discussion. And before we go, also there's Ayman from Nethermind. He joined later. Maybe you would like to give an update on the status of EOF in Nethermind?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Welcome.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. For EOF, our implementation is still kind of similar to the previous update. We just did the changes that were added to the spec. And yeah, like the reorder of simple stuff that was added to TX create and the renaming of opcodes.
Okay.
And that's mostly it.
Okay, would you like to open a PR to the implementation matrix that we have to list the stuff that you have ready?
Okay, so we'll run the test again and see how we are, and then we'll pull a PR for that.
I'll just send you a link to this table. So you seem to have a lot of stuff ready, but the Nethermind row is still empty in the table. You've got this in the Zoom chat.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Cool. Thank you for the update. And do we have anything else? Any closing comments? Okay. If not, then I suppose thank you all. And Charles?
Well, I just wanted to ask if Pavel wanted to discuss the exchange thing, but we can do that offline.
Because there's been a discussion on Discord, right? Started.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to follow. I think it's more or less satisfactory from my side. Yeah, kind of. So one concern I had about the name, but I think it's not really important. If you decided to name it as it is, I think I'm okay with it. And the example, I think, yeah, I kind of understand more how this is useful.
I mean, if you want an example of stack traffic, something like, 1/6 of all, I need to look at the chart, but a lot of it, a lot of time spent on EVM and real operation is spent just moving stuff around on the stack. And my hope is that Exchange would get rid of some of that, because there's some patterns where you move it to 1 and then you move it where you really want it, move what was 2-1 back to that stuff. And that's what was shown on the Discord. And just some of the bytecode I've been reading, I do think that Solidity also runs into the stack traffic problem that Exchange could help.
Okay, it seems like Exchange is under control. Anything else? Okay, then thank you very much, everyone. And see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks.